Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day. This is your neighborhood Sensei Fouché, telling all y'all to stay woke. But make sure you relax and always take notes. I would like to honor all of you choiced listeners, as well as you regular followers. I welcome you. I honor you by feeling welcoming towards sharing enlightenment. It is a privilege to create a platform to express a lot of the information to a larger demographic as opposed to a small group in my immediate area of residential. There is a commitment that I was deeply inspired to have in regards to paying forward, serving others. And it is humbling to grow even more in this responsibility. Working through the beginning of this channel creation has been an inspiring challenge. And the more comfortable that I become, the easier it is to communicate using this this service of value. Happiness, a lot of us think we have. Unhappiness, a lot of us know that we are in. How do you escape this paradox? How do you unsort from this tide confusion of relation? How do you not be severely damaged by this double-edged sword? Life is not easy. There is a commitment. And if you are not fully committed into acceptance and deeper, you're going to have the most difficult time trying to climb out of that quicksand. You are going to have the hardest time trying to unstring from that puppeteer that we call the conscious con. You need to let go of the strings. I know I was muffled. We need to let go of the strings from that conscious con puppeteer. The manipulation in its consistency always affects into different levels and practices of abuse. It's not easy. Not at the beginning. I was telling someone today, and it was related back to me the other day in a primary conversation, and the followed conversation behind it also was in the same reference specifically. As long in the aspect of time that you have been living in this deceptive, manipulative, and depressed existence, the commitment and time will more than likely have to be equally and exceeded in value to finally be able to identify to peace. You have a lot of making up to do. And not to someone else, and more to yourself, knowing the things that you've done, the things that you've thought, and how you allowed not only for yourself to be devalued, but also letting others devalue you. And that takes a deepest of commitment to be that direct in order to face and accept the honesty. And when that occurs, don't beat yourself down in shame. Rather, give yourself an emotional hug and tell yourself, even though you have done wrong, you are going to be okay, and you are going to make it up to yourself and others moving forward. That is the gateway to open peace. That's real talk, man. You know what I'm saying? I can testify because that's exactly what I told myself the longest of a time ago, because I know what I did. I let people down. I hurt them. I deceived them. I stole from them. I lied to them. I abandoned them. I compromised them. The deepest of shame. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't even look that guy in the face because that person disgusted me. I'd rather not look at him and be puppeted by the puppeteer and ignore the fact that I need to check myself. But instead, I enable myself in order to be validated by cons. That's cowardice. I wasn't brave enough to say no thank you. But at the same time, it wasn't completely my fault in the very beginning stages of brain development. As far as physical growth. But once I reached a certain state of full physical growth, then I had to dig into the aspect of evolution and maturity, responsibility. And once I found that responsibility and that commitment and that purpose, that created peace. And the other thing it created was the elimination of time, because I was no longer focused on something that I wasn't sure of because of what I did. Because I was focused at first on the shame of what I did and the people I let down and the abandonment. And then in the other regard, on the other opposite side of the spectrum of lowerness, I decided to think about a future that I could not make into reality until I dealt with whatever was going on at the moment. One day, I am going to be there with such and so, and everything's going to be okay. But the reality was, how are you going to make that happen when the issue is that you are immature and unreliable? Because until specific people believe in authenticity and honesty, that your being is within, there is no possibility of that future. Just a constant recurrence of past memory and shame. That's all. You know what I'm saying? You need to be able, in the words of Michael Jackson, the iconic, legendary singer, face the man in the mirror and tell that person to make a change. And when I reference man, that could be a womb man or a man, as far as masculine. Whatever gender that you are or claim, you know what I'm saying, you need to face that person in the mirror and tell it and demand it to make a change. And then that change, that is when you open up your selflessness and your serving to others in the aspect of peace. Peace is honesty. Peace is humbleness. Peace is trust. Chapter 9. Beyond happiness and unhappiness, there is peace. Once you are able to realistically clear the illusion of what you thought was happiness, within living, knowing that you are not existing in, or you are existing, in my correction, in happiness, once you are able to identify that, then you can finally respect what is to be or what could be. But it takes a commitment, and it takes a very humble honesty. The higher good beyond good and bad. Is there a difference between happiness and inner peace? Yes. Happiness depends on conditions being perceived as positive. Inner peace does not. Whenever anything negative happens to you, there is a deep lesson concealed within it. Although you may not see it at the time, even a brief illness or an accident can show you what is real and unreal in your life, what ultimately matters and what doesn't. And that takes a deeper insight instead of an impulsive thought based on emotion. The littlest thing, you know what I'm saying? You cheated on your spouse or significant other, and they couldn't get over it, and they dumped you, kicked you to the curb. There is a deep lesson from that. Or you could just kind of dismiss it and be all bitter and not be honest and do another version of the same thing by still continuing to live in whatever regards you also were responsible for in the demise of that prior relationship. You know what I'm saying? If you don't deeply analyze your mistakes and your choices in which resulted in specific consequences, you are going to go through the same exact thing. If you have full recognition and you are able to face those things and those choices and being realistic into why they needed to happen, more than likely moving forward, it should not happen again. Because now you have that true awareness and that accountability into understanding your place in the choice which created the consequence. Seen from a higher perspective, conditions are always positive. To be more precise, they are neither positive nor negative. They are as they are, and I was about to say that in ad-lib. You know what I'm saying? Positive, negative, it just all depends on your perception of choice. But realistically, it is what it is. If you want to sulk about it, you're going to sulk about it. If you want to be happy past whatever the act was and how the effect came to be, either and or, it is what it is. Whether you happy about it or mad about it, the result is what it is. The effect is what it is. You know what I'm saying? The consequence is what it is. And when you live in complete acceptance of what is, which is the only sane way to live, there is no good or bad in your life anymore. There is only a higher good, which includes the bad. It just kind of goes hand in hand. And that's what I was saying in our opening monologue is you have to accept the bad in order to connect and appreciate the value of the higher good. Seen from the perspective of the mind, that conscious con, however, there is a good bad, like dislike, love, hate. That conscious con is going to try to play division, you know what I'm saying, instead of interrelating, being interdependent. And if we was to use the term interdependence to connect bad and good, I always say, until you have lost, you never understand love. Because people that deal with love from an immature mentality in its infancy state, growing in physical stature, not emotional or psychological. Like those people always think in terms of, like I said, in the strings being pulled by the conscious con and having you believe that, you know, bad is bad and there can't be no good because of the bad. Or things are too good, and because things are too good, there can never be a bad. There's a word for that. It's called complacency. And complacency makes you think conveniently, and that is going to leave you trapped into that time factor. because at any moment there could always be a disruption. And if you are not prepared for that disruption, there is going to be a result unfavorably of your preference. Allowing to be takes you beyond the mind with its resistance patterns that create the positive negative polarities. It is an essential aspect of forgiveness. Forgiveness of the present is even more important than forgiveness of the past. If you forgive every moment, allow it to be as it is, then there will be no accumulation of resentment that needs to be forgiven at some time later. Let's read that again because that was a mic drop. Allowing to be takes you beyond the mind, which is that conscious con, with its resistance patterns, which is those 7 protectors or the 7 deadly sins that create the positive negative polarities. The ego, I am better or I am less than. The I am beyond or I am not. It is an essential aspect of forgiveness. Forgiveness of the present, forgiveness of the present in the now is even more important than forgiveness of the past. Always deal with the now. You have to be present now. You need to be accountable now. Reference the past and respect the present. If you forgive every moment in the moment, don't wait for a future, because then you create a past by waiting for a future. Because if you don't create a future, there won't be a past, and that means that you are dealing with the now. Allow it to be as it is. If you forgive every moment, allow it to be as it is. Then there will be no accumulation of resentment. If you deal with it now, then the resentment will not bubble and continue to build like the volcano that needs to be forgiven at some time later. Because by later, the volcano already built up to a high level. But it didn't have to. If you would have took the attention at the current moment before it even started to fester into a boil. Accept what is. Since mind and resistance are synonymous, acceptance immediately frees you from mind dominance and thus reconnects you with being. As a result, the usual ego motivations for doing, which is that impulsiveness. I almost had a conversation on that. You know, when impulsiveness is your plan, there is no plan. All there is demise. When impulsiveness is your plan, there is no plan. You know what I'm saying? There was no thought. There was no depth into your reasoning other than just acting off of emotion, not logic. You know what I'm saying? Will cease to operate. As a result, the usual ego motivations for doing will cease to operate, and that's if you accept what is. If you do opposite than the before mentioned, then that whole creation of that possible effect will just dissipate. It won't even come to existence because it never was created by the initial cause. An intelligence much greater than the mind is now in charge, and that is your subconscious self, your higher self, your God self. And so a different quality of consciousness will flow into your doing when you follow your God and not the evil. Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. For what could more aptly fit your needs? This was written 2,000 years ago by Marcus Aurelius, one of those exceedingly rare humans who possessed worldly power as well as wisdom. It seems that most people need to experience a great deal of suffering. Ain't that what I said? Most people don't appreciate until they have nothing. It seems that most people need to experience a great deal of suffering before they will relinquish resistance and accept, before they will forgive. As soon as they do, one of the greatest miracles happens: the awakening of being consciousness. You'll finally be conscious. You'll finally be spiritual. You know what I'm saying? In full. You know what I'm saying? Not some masquerade, like you got a mask on, but your real face still is connected with the puppet. You know what I'm saying? Strings and wood. It seems most people need to experience a great deal of suffering again before they will relinquish resistance and accept, before they will forgive. As soon as they do, one of the greatest miracles happens: the awakening of being consciousness through what appears as evil, the transmutation of suffering into inner peace. Though forgiveness, which essentially means recognizing the insustainability of the past and allowing the present moment to be as it is, the miracle of transformation happens not only within but also without. A silent space of intense presence arises both in you and around you. Whoever or whatever enters that field of consciousness will be affected by it, sometimes visibly and immediately, sometimes at deeper levels, or sometimes at deeper levels, with visible changes appearing at a later time. Don't even focus on it, because it's just going to be and continue to radiate more in being. The end of your life drama. And this is what I was talking about, because if you are able to deal with now and not create a future by allowing for a past to manifest, you know what I'm saying, then you ain't gonna have any of this drama thing. You know what I'm saying? You create a past by not dealing with the now, and then the future is going to be based off of the unresolvement of that now past, because since it wasn't dealt with in the present, it is a past connected to a future to be as a result of the cause of decision or the neglect of the moment. Most of the so-called bad things that happen in people's lives are due to unconsciousness, because you don't want to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? And then you let this character Khan pull the strings instead of listen deeply to your moral self, which you aren't ready for. Because you still following a high level of immaturity, and that just falls in line with the complacency and being in long subjectivity of that evil. They are self-created, or rather ego-created, as far as bad things. I sometimes refer to those things as drama. When you are fully conscious, drama does not come into your life anymore. Doesn't have to be. I mean, you deal with things, but your whole state of processing in those moments is not, full of nervousness or worry and high anxiety. Ego is the unobserved mind that runs your life when you are not present as the witnessing consciousness, the watcher. The witnessing consciousness, the watcher, which is the in-depth processor, not the impulsive reactor or thinker. The ego perceives itself as a separate fragment in a hostile universe, right? Man on the island with the volleyball, castaway, with no real interconnection to any other being, which means anybody that is conscious, like you can't even hear, let alone listen. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how deaf you are and connected to the voice of the evil. Surrounded by other egos, which either sees it as a potential threat or which it will attempt to use for its own ends. You basically manipulate a manipulator, because, you know what I'm saying, misery loves company, and they all roll together. You know what I'm saying? One person will deceive another person for their own pedestal beyond that other person, because it's an ego game. You know what I'm saying? And it's a survival of the fittest. You know what I'm saying? The basic ego patterns are designed to combat its own deep-seated fear and sense of lack. They are resistance, control, power, greed, defense, attack. Some of the ego strategies are extremely clever, yet they never truly solve any of its problems, simply because the ego itself is the problem. When egos come together, whether in personal relationships or in organizations or institutions, bad things happen sooner or later. Drama of one kind or another in form or conflict, problems, power struggles, emotional or physical violence, and so on. Furthermore, many types of illness are caused by the ego's continuous resistance, which creates restrictions and blockages in flow of energy through the body. When you reconnect with being and are no longer run by your mind, you will cease to create those things. The mind is a tricky character, always wants to play. You do not create or participate in drama anymore. You're solution oriented. You're not going to be problem based. You ain't worried about making assertive decisions. You know what I'm saying? You're not afraid to be dealing with consequences. What is, it just is and will be. Whenever two or more egos come together, drama of one kind or another ensues. Two immature minds bring the greatest of a problem. There got to be a grown-up in the room. But even if you live totally alone, that isolation thing, oh, if everyone was to disappear and I was by myself, like, that's straight generic dumb. But even if you live totally alone, you still create your own drama. When you feel sorry for yourself, oh, I wish I was around some other people. Well, you didn't like them. Now they ain't around. You know what I'm saying? Now you want people. Like, you don't know what the hell's going on. That's drama. When you feel guilty or anxious, that's drama. You know you did something wrong. You're highly anxious. You know what I'm saying? You are impulsive. That's drama. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just simple definition. You know, look it up. I'm telling you, don't believe me. Buy all the books. Read all the research online. Look everybody up. Look every famous physician, psychologist, psychiatrist. Look them up. Tell me I'm wrong, please. I want to learn something new. I want to be corrected. Please tell me. I want you to do it. And not because I'm being like facetious, I'm being honest. When you let the past or future obscure the present, you are creating time, psychological time, the stuff out of which drama is made. Again, you create it by not dealing with things. When you don't deal with things, then you create the drama, time. You trapped in time. You don't have to be trapped in time. All you gotta do to be free is actually be free. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like hiding, doing the fear thing, the box. What's in the box? You're in the box. Whenever you are not honoring the present moment by allowing it to be, you are creating drama. Most people are in love with their particular life drama. Their story is their identity. The ego runs their life. They have their whole sense of self invested in it. Even their usually unsuccessful search for an answer, a solution, or for healing becomes part of it. What they fear and resist most is the end of their drama. As long as they are their mind, what they fear and resist most is their own awakening. They don't want to be awake because then they got to change all the crappy things that they do. And they don't want to do that. So then they want to continue to be in the cycle of drama. And that's how it rolls. As long as they are in their mind, that conscious con, what they fear and resist most is their own awakening. When you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. You over here trying to say a duck is a goose. And it's like, no. I am a duck. You keep trying to call it a goose. It's like, no, I'm a duck. And you keep trying to change it into something else, but it's not that. It's a duck. Or vice versa. However you want to use the analogy. Flip it, bounce it, however you want to, hold on to it and disperse it. An argument implies identification with your mind and a mental position, as well as resistance and reaction to the other person's position. You can't understand what is, there got to be the whole emotion and validation behind it. You just can't understand the other person's platform of moral foundation, because your morals are limited in your stringing by the puppeteer. The result is that the polar opposites become mutually energized. These are the mechanics of unconsciousness. You can still make your point clearly and firmly, but there will be no reactive force behind it. No defense or attack. It just is. It's the information. You could be extremely firm. You could be extremely direct. You could be extremely in repeat. But it's consistent. It stays what it is. It's on point. It has foundation and stability. because to argue it, like, is to try to document it. And if it can't be documented, then it becomes frustrated and not being able to be argued. These are the mechanics of the unconsciousness. You can still make your point clearly and firmly, but there will be no reactive force behind it, no defense or attack, so it won't turn into drama. When you are fully conscious, you cease to be in conflict. No one who is at one with himself can even conceive of conflict. This refers not only to conflict with other people, but more fundamentally to conflict within you, which ceases when there is no longer any clash between the demands and expectations of your mind and what is. And trust me, man, we all fight this. I fight this all the time. You know what is. You know what I'm saying? And then you let that lower part of you have you fall back into the belief factor. But again, at the back end of this conversation, we in the age of Aquarius, or close enough to it for those that want to argue. But Aquarius is to know. So we got to quit focusing on believing and focusing on knowing. Because at the beginning point, beforehand, you have a belief. But once you already in it as it is, then it is to know. Not for what you want it to be. That's in a whole nother age. That's in a whole nother age of man to be. We ain't even there yet. Don't focus on being, because after knowing is to use. And then after to use is to see. And y'all can look it up, because we in the counterclockwise of the whole astrology. And I know my key words. The age of Pisces was to believe. The age of Aquarius is to know. The age of Capricorn is to use. And the age of Sagittarius is to see. In our next conversation, which may not be tomorrow, we'll probably take a moment to breathe a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Put a lot of work in to this study and the sharing. Impermanence and cycles of life is where we're going to go tomorrow. So, or not tomorrow, but in the following conversation, we'll say that. Impermanence. Because we don't want to be confused with words. You know what I'm saying? Because anybody could tell you anything, but we're going to get specific. Impermanence. The state or fact of lasting for only a limited period of time. Limited time in the cycles of life. That's going to be interesting. I hope you think so, because I already know so. Impermanence. The state or fact of lasting for only a limited period of time. And you could take that in a lot of different directions depending on your train of thought. You know what I'm saying? Because a word is what it is. And depending on actions, that makes words be what they are. You know what I'm saying? A word is just a word, but the action behind the word actually references it specifically. So really think about that. You know what I'm saying? This is your neighborhood Sensei Fouché, telling all y'all, make sure you stay woke. And make sure that you get your necessary tools. Get your meditation right. Make sure you liquefy with the purity. Get your notation tools. Get comfortable in your process of listening as opposed to hearing. And then you take some notes. Be smooth. 1.